Education is an integral part of human society. It is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the perspective of the world. Without education, this world cannot become a better place. Hence, we say that for the evolution of a country, there is a need of education. Keeping this in mind, an education policy is made as it helps a school establish rules and procedures and create standards of quality for learning and safety, as well as expectations and accountability. Finally, after 34 years, the education policy has been restructured and approved by Union Cabinet recently. It is the first education policy of the 21st century, which aims to address the many growing developmental imperatives of our country and is aligned to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And today, we at Indianica Learning are taking this initiative to have a detailed panel discussion on how the new education policy impact and bring the changes to the current K-12 educational scenario. A very good evening, namaskar, sat sri akal, adab to one and all. My name is Swarup, your host and moderator for the day from Indianica Learning Private Limited. Heartily welcome you all to the second Learning and Education Leadership Talk series on rebooting K-12 education in the context of new national education policy. We are pleased to see the participation from across the nation as well as from other countries. Welcome all of you. I hope you all are safe. You are taking all safety measures. Your family members are also safe. Well, today in this panel discussion, we have amongst us a well-known, reputed personality, Shri Anil Swarup ji. But before we invite him, I would like to introduce Mr. Sumit Gupta, Managing Director and CEO, Indianica Learning Private Limited, with all of you. Well, Mr. Gupta is a graduate in Commerce and Law, an alumnus of IIM Calcutta, and a member of FICCI's Publishing Committee. He has been in education sector for around 2 decades. I request Mr. Gupta to please join us. Over to you, sir. Sir, I request you to please unmute.
Thank you, Swarup. I think in that excitement of this webinar, I forgot to unmute myself. Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone. I'm delighted that all of you could make time and join us for this panel discussion today. At Indianica Learning, our mission is to enrich experiences of the learners that we connect with. And in this spirit, we have started this series of webinars under the banner of Learning and Education Leadership Talk Series. Today, we have a panel discussion on rebooting K-12 education in the context of the new national education policy. So, well, as Swarup mentioned that it's been 34 years that this policy is going in, and there are various views we will hear from the panelists as well today. The new NEP proposes to make certain changes which are primarily progressive in nature at the foundational as well as higher education level in the Indian education system. Great focus has been laid on the equipping students with the 21st century skills and a proposal to impart lessons in the mother tongue in the early years. I am of a view that if this policy gets implemented, it will be complete and it is much needed reboot of the education system in India. Today, we are very fortunate to have Shri Anil Swarup ji amongst us, who is our chief guest for this panel discussion. While Mr. Swarup's name doesn't need any introduction, yet I will like to say a few words about him. Shri Anil Swarup is not just a civil servant, an excellent book, which is relevant for not only for the the civil servants but also for the corporate leaders. And he's an experienced public servant with a demonstrated history of working in call and school education sectors. Before joining the IAS in 1981, he served the IPS for about a year. He also won the Director's Gold Medal Award while he was at the LBS National Academy of Administration amongst the officers of his batch. As a strategic thinker and an innovative leader, he has won several awards and nominations. Welcome, sir. to this panel discussion. He will be joined by our panelists, Dr. Punam Kashyap, who is Director Education of Daily World Foundation, and Mrs. Amrita Burman, Deputy Director, Sunbeam Group of Educational Institutions. Welcome and thank you for joining us, ma'am, today. I know we are all looking forward to hear from the expert panelists here and our chief guest. So I would like to hand over the session to Shri Anil Swarup. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very kind words, and what a pleasure it is to be back amongst principals. I remember during my younger days, I used to shudder at the thought of being in front of principals. Now I talk at them, talk to them. But you know, this new education policy took a long time coming, but I would believe that it is perhaps the most comprehensive and visionary document that we've ever had. I recall that when Dr. Kasturi Rangan came over to meet me to ask him about my views about the policy, I was then the school education secretary. I told him, you are wasting your time. He was a bit surprised. I told him, does this country need another policy or we need an action plan? So he understood the point, and then I drove home and I told him, it's good that you're coming up with a policy. No one will have any grudge against it. But it would be better if you come out with a clear-cut action plan, and I'll explain that to you. Because this policy has to be looked at two levels. One at the conceptual level and the other at the operational level. I'll try and touch upon some of the conceptual part, the ideological part, and the operational part. At a conceptual level, I think the policy contains absolutely amazing features. No one could have asked for better. For example, the focus on early childhood education. I think all researchers have clearly demonstrated that the child's mind is made up in the first few years, and hence it's important to indulge in teaching at that point in time. Of course, it will have to be a different sort of learning process, but nonetheless it is required. The policy recognizes that. I remember as school education secretary, I started it all when we redid the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and made it into Samagri Shiksha. We incorporated ECE in it, and I'm so glad that the policy recognizes that. The second very important aspect of the policy, which I feel, is the part relating to mother tongue. You know, many people are objecting to it because they say that they should be taught in English, little realizing that the policy is not against English. It talks about mother tongue because, again, innumerous researchers have established that the comprehension, understanding of concepts is much better in mother tongue. The policy does not say you don't teach other languages. Correct. It merely says that attempt. And when I say the word attempt, I would like to clarify here because I've been addressing, I think, webinars, 2 webinars every day, and I'm trying to set to rest certain apprehensions and misapprehensions about the policy, because everyone thinks that the policy is going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen tomorrow. In fact, the policy itself lays down a roadmap. And secondly, policy itself is not executable, so to say. You have to have government orders to follow. And yesterday, we had a seminar, a webinar organized by the Nexus of Good, where the Secretary of School Education, the current one, she came and explained this very clearly, that there are various things to be done, and they will take the time, and government will consult everyone. So what policy does is a broad guideline about what could be done. It doesn't even say what should be done. In fact, in some cases, it leaves it to many states. So the second important part was in mother tongue. And when people object too much, then I say, which do you think, of course, ex-principal DPS is sitting here as Secretary of Education. I had my own evaluation system. Which school do you think in Delhi would be the best? I would immediately pick up Sardar Patel Vidyalaya. Absolutely without doubt. Because, pardon my using this phraseology, they're still to become commercial in their approach to education.
True.
That's a school in the real. And mind you, that school teaches children in the mother tongue till class 5.
I know. Yeah.
Amazing school, and is doing very well. Similarly, the Jawaharlal Nehru Vidyalayas, they teach in mother tongue till class 8, and fantastic children come out of it. So I'm not saying that's the only way of going about it. I think the policy does it well to recognize this fact. Does not expect states or schools to switch over to mother tongue tomorrow, but that's the roadmap they lay down. The third important part in the policy is the focus on vocational training. I think it's an amazing step. Again, this was done by CBSE some time ago at my behest when I was Secretary of Education, because I always felt this hierarchy of streams, science, commerce, arts, and vocational, was incorrect. because we are pushing everyone to study these subjects and then become useless when they do their BA and MA, good for nothing. If they were skilled appropriately, probably they will find job. Again, amazing thing. But perhaps the best part of the policy which I find is in the focus on teachers. As school education secretary, though I was probably the most uneducated, illiterate civil servant to have been made education secretary, soon I discovered that the problem was with regard to teachers. If they lie at the pivot of school education, and I remember before I became school education secretary, I was core secretary when everything was collapsing and I was asked to set it right. And when I was posted as core secretary, I asked somebody, "Yaar, ye sector kaisa hai?" He said, "Gangs of Wasipur dekhi hai kya?" So that explained the coal sector. Now, when I joined the school education, within a month, someone asked me, "Yaar, kaisa lag raha? How are you finding this sector?" I said, in coal, all the mining was underground, the mafias were overground. And I have written a lot about mafias in my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. But in education sector, all the mafias are underground, eating into the essentials of Indian system. Now, I won't go into the details of those mafias, but a couple of them related to school teachers. Perhaps the biggest mafia in this country is the one run by B.Ed and D.Ed colleges. Out of 16,000 B.Ed and D.Ed colleges, 4,000 do not exist. They're just a name and then give you a degree. Now, the policy addresses this issue by bringing in this integrated 4-year course where such colleges as are fraudulent will be eliminated. Brilliant step. Not only will it help there, for getting better and brighter children into this stream of teaching, the policy provides for scholarships. It also says that the child will have to take a call after class 12 whether he wants to become a teacher. So it is not the last resort after having tried everything, not getting anywhere and then becoming teacher. The policy now encourages people to come early. So as I said, policy is phenomenal. It talks about overall development. I mean, many other things that are talked about. I won't go into the details. At a conceptual level, if I have any problem with the policy, I have a couple of problems. And I hope they get addressed when the executive orders. When people from the ministry spoke to me, I told them this aspect should have been seen. Number one, 50% of our children go to private schools. The policy treats it with a barge pole, doesn't even touch it. In fact, it says not for profit. I mean, I don't know why this allergy against profit. You know why I say that? There are 2-3 reasons. One, of course, the enormous contribution made by private schools in providing quality education. They're both good, bad schools. I'm not saying all are good, all are bad, but some of them are really outstanding. Of course, some groups are real mafias bringing a bad name to the school. I'm again not going into the details of that. Very sensitive topic. I've written it in my book. Those who want it can read it. Now, but still, private sector can do a lot of good to school education, not merely directly, but also, all the proposals that have been given in the policy, where is the money to implement it? I don't see the money in the policy anywhere, except that the policy says that 6% of GDP will go to education. Now, this was said by Dr. Kothari long ago, not now. There's nothing new, but 6% never came. Maximum that we went was 3.1%. And I don't see it coming. COVID has made matters worse, but even otherwise, as Secretary of School Education, I saw that the allocation for school education was in real terms coming down. And the reason is very simple. Because for a politician, tomorrow is more important than the day after tomorrow. So the impact of poor education comes 6 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line. Who's bothered? And in any case, there will be a lot of demand of the available money. I don't think that money is coming here. But the good news is there are certain aspects of the policy which can be done without this money. But if you look at the teachers part, which I'm saying, which the policy does very well, is in terms of improving the quality of teachers, in terms of the pre-service training, as well as the selection. You might be aware that one of the former chief ministers is behind the bars for this racket of selection. Now the policy talks about the entrance test. These are aspects which will improve the quality of teachers. The policy also talks about further strengthening Diksha. That's a portal that enables teacher to improve his or her skills, his capabilities, and it is already doing very well. This was set up 3.5 years ago. And it's doing amazingly well, and policy reiterates that. So some amazing features in the policies, except the fact of private sector not involved. The second objection which I have with the policy is with regard to the recognition that the NGO should have been given. When I became school education secretary, and I'm glad I was eavesdropping in the discussion that was going on, somebody did mention about traveling around the world and finding good things within the country. So there was when I became education secretary, the word went around that is an ignorant chap education secretary has become education secretary. So you had all those advisors and Rai Sahabs who came in to tell me how education should be handled in the country. And one of them who came from across the Atlantic and heavily paid came and told me, sir, you should go over to England, Finland, Holland, Scotland. So I said, have you seen motherland? He didn't understand my question. I said, I would believe a lot of answers to our problems lie within the country. Let's try it out. So I went to 24 states in the country in the first 3 months. And when I say states, I didn't merely go to the state headquarters. I went to Bastar, Sukma, traveled from Pune to Goa, traveled from Srinagar to Leh, not taking the national highway. And I understood what education was, what the problem was, how solution was. And in this solution, the good news was that a lot of NGOs were participating very well and they were doing very well. And that's what led me to start this whole movement of Nexus of Good, of finding good work that is happening. So second problem for me in the education policy is the recognition that should have come to the NGOs has not come. The third not so major issue is with regard to examinations. I just don't understand. On the one hand, the policy talks about reducing the burden on the child. Then it says that you're going to have board exams from class 3, 5, 8, 10 and 12. First of all, one should look at the practicality of it. And this, I'm gradually going on to the operation part of the policy. In India, there is no dearth of ideas and policies and conglomeration of those ideas. But for an idea to fructify and sustain in a democracy, it has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, and judicially tenable. Now, it may appear to be handful. I have had 38 years of experience in the government, and I came to the clear conclusion that policies and ideas don't mean anything to man on the ground. He wants an action plan, and that's precisely what I told Dr. Kasturi Rangan. Work out an action plan clearly outlining what needs to be done, how it will be done, who would do it, by when it will be done, and it should not be merely for the central government. Each state should come out with a different set of action plan in the broad outline that you give. It's very fine that you come up with a policy, but without that monitorable action plan, I don't think after 10 years we'll be sitting again and discussing the policy over and over again. The man on the ground wants action. So that brings me to the rollout of the policy, the operational issues. I talked about the philosophy, the conceptual part of it. Now look at the operational problems that we are going to have. First, it's nice to have early childhood education, but as the policy itself says that you will require special teachers to teach them. The policy talks about somehow training Anganwadi workers, and we know what Anganwadi workers are, we know what they're doing. Whether it will happen, then if you want to get those people to teach, to get into early childhood education, first there will be a problem with human resources, that is administrative doability, and where is the money to pay those teachers? I don't know how many of you are aware that government is unable to pay the salary of existing teachers. There is a serious crisis on that front, and we are talking of more teachers. So until you have that money, I find it difficult. Then we go on to the mother tongue part. Of course, it is not going to happen tomorrow, but we'll have to look at the practical problems of multi-mother tongue children in a class. We'll have to understand the migrant teachers. We'll have to understand that there are teachers presently teaching children in a different tongue, not mother tongue. Should we throw them out? Where do we get efficient mother tongue teachers? We don't get efficient non-mother tongue teachers. So I'm not saying it is not doable. In fact, yesterday the webinar was so good. I mean, the secretary actually laid out the roadmap. Very, very practical, doable roadmap she laid down, giving clear-cut timelines as to how it will happen. So the real, as they say, proof of pudding lies in eating it. The pudding has been, so to say, prescribed. It's a recipe. The pudding will have to be prepared still. I wish Dr. Kasturi Rangan and her team, we spent 6 years for a policy. This started way back in 2014, the exercise started. And in 2015 and 2020, we have it here. So in 6 years, we've come up with a document, not an action plan. And now it is left to the mandarins of the education ministry. I think we have the finest set of officers at the central government ministry. Almost everyone has worked with me, so I know their quality. Absolutely amazing set of people. They're going to do their best, but the task has been made tough. I hope they get support from the finance ministry, because without funds coming in, I don't think all that has been said can be done. However, my suggestion to the ministry was, and when we discussed yesterday, that pick up those aspects of the policy which do not require too much money. For example, those relating to the teacher are extremely critical, do not require too much money, in terms of setting up those 4-year integrated course or training of teachers or coming up with a better recruitment system, things will improve. As I said earlier, my only conceptual problem with the policy is with regard to the total sidelining of the private domain. We should have sat with them. We should have discussed with them. We should have understood their problem. We should have partnered with them. I'm a great believer in public-private partnership. I mean, there is a lot of wrong in the public domain. There's a lot of wrong in the private domain. But there's a lot of good in public domain and a lot of good in the private domain. Why can't these good come together, learn from each other? The space of school education is so phenomenal, so enormous that both public and private can contribute. But as I conclude, I'd like to assure everyone sitting here, because yesterday's discussion got that reassurance, that don't be apprehensive of the policy. Look at those aspects of the policies which are doable and get down to doing it. The government does not want to unilaterally do things. It is in the process of negotiating. In fact, it has given time for suggestions for implementation till 31st of this month. And I'm sure discussions will not end thereafter. Discussions will continue, as is happening in the states, because some states did approach me to discuss what can be done, how it can be done. So I'm also discussing with them. Of course, I wish I had solutions to all the problems of the world and of the education. No one has it. But if all of us sit around, as is possible in this workshop or seminar that is being organized today, I think the people sitting here who had enormous experience can contribute to implementation of the policy. I think the time is now over to critically look at the policy. Policy is there for us to exist. Now our job should be to see how do we make best out of the policy. Thank you very much for inviting me here. If there are any questions, I'll take them later on. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for sharing your precious knowledge and experience with our participants. We are really enlightened by your valuable inputs and insights on this topic. This perspective has really given us a very new, insight on this particular topic. Now, well, it's time to have the panel discussion. I request all the participants to please use the Q&A feature, which is there on their screen, to ask any question. I just request you to please mention your location and to whom you are asking this question, followed by your question. Then we'll pick some of them, and then we're gonna give you the access to ask your question to the respected guests. Now, I would like to start with Dr. Punam Kashyap first. Well, Dr. Kashyap, your contribution to nurture the DPS schools in different regions is really remarkable. We would like to know from your perspective on the 4 developmental stages proposed in the new national education policy. And please share your views on blended learning as well. Over to you, Dr. Kashyap.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really honored to be here, especially with our chief guest, Mr. Anil Swarup. He's actually said it all, but if I may say so, I'm an incorrigible optimist and a passionate educationist. So I also believe that if our attitude is positive, we can all get together, all agencies, public, private, everyone, and make it happen. But before we analyze the NEP, let us understand what is it that we desire of our kids as educators and parents. I'm sure you'll all agree that all we want is happy, healthy, joyful, confident, creative, caring, and compassionate kids, conscientious, value-oriented, good human beings. Kids who can be daring enough to question and think differently, who can develop a conscious awareness of one's role and responsibilities in a changing world, whose dreams can be fulfilled, whose signatures can turn into autographs, who can appreciate nature, art, music, theater. Now, the new education policy has given us a fresh, beautiful canvas to paint on. And it provides a roadmap for reclaiming, reinventing, restructuring, redefining, re-articulating, and rebooting K-12 education, as today's topic suggests. So I intend to delve broadly on the salient aspects, how to achieve the assessment changes, the blended learning, challenges and merits very briefly as I possibly can to get across to you. You know, I personally and very strongly believe every child is unique. Every child is a hero. All we have to do is tap the potential, give him the right environment, and then the sky is the limit. As Mr. Anil Swarup very rightly mentioned, if I may say so before I carry on, you know, his concerns have been our concerns, my concerns also. Most importantly, teachers. You know, they are underpaid. They come by chance, not by choice. And they are very instrumental in leading a child, in motivating a child, inspiring a child. So that's very, very important that we really concentrate on that area. You know, I've been to Finland and I've seen their education system. I've been all over the world. In fact, I picked up something from France, something from Finland, something from our own country, all these little rural schools also, even these Anganwadis. There's something nice everywhere. There's something that we can bring home and put it together and then make it, well, really viable. Of course, we all understand the structure change. There's no point in talking about it. It's really been talked about too much, the 15 years of schooling. But I feel the happy addition of grades 1 and 2 to the foundation stage. That's something very good, very encouraging. And as Mr. Anil Swarup has already mentioned about the mother tongue, the only thing I would like to add here is it's very good to understand some complex concepts in the mother tongue. And if we can do that, why not? In fact, I'm running 61 schools of the Delhi World Foundation, and we are allowing it at many places, you know, places like Raipur and Bhattapara and Devas and lots of places in far-flung areas. And wherever we possibly can, and even in the South, where children only understand, let's say, Tamil or Malayalam or Telugu, we are trying to get them teachers who can explain complex concepts like this. So it's not as though there can be a hard and fast rule, and I'm sure it's not a compulsion, but it's nice that the policy has thought of avoiding or doing away with the language barriers. This is what I am very happy about. Also, the prioritization of early education and care, the encouragement of Anganwadis and Bal Bhavans, that's a very good thing. And of course, with all the play-related activities. And of course, now we have to understand that we have to bring in the contemporary subjects also. We have started coding at about the age of 4, even in the kindergarten, because coding, it's without the screen. And that is what leads to brain development and ultimately artificial intelligence. Of course, the policy says it will start from grade 6, which is also fairly good. But I think in the progressive schools, it has already started. And of course, homeschooling will have to be given a lot of impetus, and that is because of blended learning. You see, the blended learning program, I must say, I worked with a visionary called Mr. Sunny Varkey. I think many people would know of him because I worked a lot in the Gulf. And this was in 1999, one of the conferences where he talked about flipped classrooms and blended learning. And at that time, we really didn't quite decipher what he's trying to say. And he, of course, definitely didn't know about COVID-19 or this pandemic. Nevertheless, he did think of the digitalization of the digital world. And the blended learning program will now come into vogue in a very nice way, because it will mean that the child need not come to school every day. There will be homeschooling, there will be something about school. The emotional quotient will be taken care of when the child is in the school, and problems will be solved, but it will be good for the child, and also he'll get time for critical thinking, for, thinking differently. He'll have space for all this, which is so important. And so the education will become holistic, joyful, inquiry-based, analysis and application-based, game-based. In all our schools, I mean, from a very long time, I've laid a lot of impetus on the 4 C's of learning: the creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication skills. And now it's all coming into vogue. I mean, I was a teacher 30 years back, and one of those very, very passionate ones. So I used experiential learning, which I didn't even know the terminology at that time. But I was doing a lesson on helicopters, and I took my entire class to the Safdarjung airport and organized, actual experience for them on helicopters. And this was really well taken. And I do remember that initially when I went into school, I got children to create their own little gardens, because in that little experience, while creating a garden, it was like, integrated subjects, interdisciplinary, language learning, everything, chemistry, biology, everything they learned together. And now that's what's happening. And I've also tried on the sports field, the PE teachers working with the science teachers, the maths teachers. So we've been doing all this for years. It's only not been given that kind of a shape, that kind of a policy that it's coming into now. Of course, we'll have to get into coding, design thinking, organic living, robotics, environment. But what will happen is we need to have all agencies meet together to be able to get that kind of financial, support. Otherwise, this will not be possible. So the heart of this new approach to an integrated, multidisciplinary, multi-language, this kind of a use of technology, intensive use to attain optimal outcomes in the domains of physical and motor development, cognitive, socioeconomic, ethical, everything. So it actually encompasses everything, right from the sense of aesthetics, health and nutrition, physical fitness, wellness, mindfulness, yoga, the art of storytelling, which is really fantastic, poetry, puppetry, theater. And of course, what I'm very happy about, of course, is the joy quotient, because for me, all my schools, this is, the mantra. The joy quotient is very, very important. And the policy speaks of no separation now among curricular, co-curricular, extracurricular, like a humanities, commerce. Children in grade 9, 10, once they would take their streams, they would start feeling, oh, I'm not in the science stream, so I'm not the privileged one. So, for a child, it is a very good thing now that you don't have to have streams. A science student can do art, can do theater, can do music, and that is how it should be. You make a complete human being like this only. So all this logical reasoning, collaboration, this will all come, since there is now no separation among curricular, extracurricular, or co-curricular, or among arts, science, or humanities. So I'm so happy that this kind of experiential learning will be now adopted. And as Mr. Swarup said, yes, this will not happen in a jiffy, but once we've made a beginning, it will happen. The best thing that we've seen is during this pandemic. It's been heartening to see the resilience and joy in our children and teachers. The way they have accepted it, the way the children have shown their creativity with the virtual programs, the PTMs, classes, functions, festivals. So it's really heartening, and I'm sure all this will also be imbibed, especially if we can prepare a positive and a proper roadmap, which is very important. And I'm sure it will come into force. The progress card also will be a holistic 360-degree. You see, something like what the International Baccalaureate proclaims. And they really, you look at a report, because my granddaughter is doing the International Baccalaureate. She's now in grade 11. But you look at the way the teachers talk about the child, even parents cannot understand their child so well. And that is the beauty. If a teacher can connect with the child so beautifully, that will be, I'm telling you, the ultimate. And the progress card, of course, will change. It'll have to be a multi-dimensional report which reflects the uniqueness of each learner in all the domains. And naturally, the assessment should be all three: self-assessment, peer assessment, and teacher assessment. So there'll be a flexibility of subjects. Just let me know when I should stop. I'll stop. The challenges, of course, Mr. Swarup has pointed out, and I agree with most of them. The only thing most importantly required is how do we envisage a robust digital infrastructure? How will we integrate technology? How will we ensure meritocracy? You see, most importantly, ethics of the teachers are also important. How fair can we be? Because now with this kind of a program, we need to be very, very fair to the children. And we have to bridge the gap between theory and practice. The NEP elucidates the need of homeschooling and multi-language learning, which will be all right. That will be done, despite the all-encompassing facade of the new policy. The success will have some skeptical thoughts and laws, all kinds of things, interstate movement and stuff like that. I would just like to wind up by saying that it is a long road ahead, but milestones are in place. Let's all be very positive. Do we see the glass half full or half empty? So that's how it is. As I said, I'm an incorrigible optimist, so I can see things really improving, and I'm putting in my best efforts in my schools. I'll just quickly tell you a little word from the child. I am a child. I'm not built to sit still. Keep my hands to myself, take turns, stand in line, be patient, or keep quiet. I need motion. I need novelty. I need adventure. I need love. And I need to engage the world with my whole body. Let me play. Trust me, I'm learning. So we need to ignite curiosity, creativity, compassion, communication skills, citizenship, and community understanding. Let me tell you, we are all on the right lines, and we will have some apprehensions. That's all right. But still, hats off to Mr. Kasturi Rangan, and I'm sure a roadmap is there and systems will be strengthened. And let's see. Well, I'll take on questions. Thank you very much. Disruption is the new mantra.
Good evening, ma'am.
Dr. Kashyap, thank you so much for your valuable inputs on this topic. And there are many takeaways. Let me tell you, many takeaways from your talk. But the best thing which I have seen here is, what I've listened to is attitude. That makes a real difference. And it's your perspective, what you look at, whether the glass is half full or half empty. It's completely your perspective and attitude. Thank you so much, Dr. Kashyap, for your insightful and valuable inputs on this particular topic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now we have another expert, Ms. Amrita Burman, with us. Well, Ms. Burman, your contribution to bring up Sunbeam Group is really impeccable. And as we know, teachers training plays a vital role in the transaction of curriculum, which has been recognized in the national education policy as well. So what are the initiatives taken in this policy for teachers so that they are prepared to incorporate new pedagogies and contribute to the holistic development of the learners? Also, please share your views on the bilingual and multilingual approach as well. Over to you, ma'am.
Right. Thank you so much. And good evening to everyone, all the viewers, and especially to Anilji, because I think it's always very, very heartening to listen to his views. It was lovely listening to you also, Dr. Punam. So of course, there were some bullet points given to me to speak on, but I'm also probably going to extend because few things have been spoken by the other panelists. I'll probably just skim over a few and go a little in depth and give my points of view. And as rightly said by Dr. Punam, I'm also an optimist. I think that's the DNA of every teacher, because if you're not an optimist, you just can't probably exist in a classroom. Yeah. So I take off from where you start, ma'am, where you ended. So I'm also an optimist, and I think I have great reasons to say that this document is a great document, according to me, very futuristic. And I also feel that there is going to be a political will, because that's what the Prime Minister said. So obviously there are intentions of getting this document going, because this is just a policy, as mentioned by Anilji. It's about the action plan. And the fact that there have been, we have all been asked to give our views on how the implementation has to be done by the 31st. Debates will still go on. And what's very heartening is, I remember when the draft NEP came out, and even then we were asked to give our inputs, and I think thousands of inputs went in. And what I see now that's come out as the policy finally, many of those inputs have been kept in mind, have been taken in. So I'm very, very optimistic that the document has the will, the government is listening, and something good is going to be implemented out of this policy. So let me first begin by talking about the teacher, because I think that's the basic unit in a school. If the teachers are good in the classroom, well, many of the things are taken care of. Every child finds his place under the sun if the teacher is good. There's been a lot of talk about the teacher training Anilji spoke about, and I think he very rightly mentioned something that even I very strongly believe. Once a student is going to choose, being a teacher in the 4-year integrated B.Ed program after class 12, well, there are all chances that you're going to be a more passionate teacher, because it's by choice and it is not by chance. So once you have your passion right, there are all chances that you're going to deliver very, very well in the class. Besides that, when the document is talking about the continuous professional development, as a teacher, once you're out of a 4-year B.Ed program, you're taking your professional development very seriously, because you know, as a teacher, you've been booted on that for the past 4 years, that you have to keep continuously upgrading yourself on different aspects of curriculum, pedagogy, assessments, technology training. Because if you don't keep yourself completely with times, it's very difficult to reach out to children who are actually, to a large extent, quite ahead of you. So if you really want to connect with your children on all fronts, schools like us, government as a whole, has to work on great training programs. And I'm only hoping, again, that the training that we are talking about, of course, I think to a large extent, the private schools do manage to do a lot of training, and it's nothing new for us. Continuous professional development has been something which is a part of all good schools. But the kind of programs that have been coming from the government, from CBSE, well, some have been good, some have been a little questionable. Yes. So I'm hoping that the training programs coming from the government are going to be good, because I agree with Anilji that if we want to make a difference, well, you have to take care of that 50% of the private schools who will, to a large extent, take care of a lot of their own stuff. But we have to take a lot of charge of the public schools, the government schools, I would say. So these government schools need a lot of inputs from the government. Otherwise, it's going to be like the CCE pattern. You bring it overnight, you do very poor training on a very good concept, and then everything gets lost. So I'm a little concerned about the training part. But it's a great move on the part of the government. At least they brought it down in the policy. The other important aspect of the teachers' part is the career management progression, which to some extent they have linked to the continuous professional development. So there are going to be some parameters on which a teacher is going to be assessed. It's going to be a 360-degree assessment, peer reviews, attendance of the teacher, how regular she's been, her commitment, the hours of CPD, all these assessments, the standards have to be met. So therefore, your progress, the teacher's progress in terms of tenure and salary are going to be not just because you worked for many years, but it's going to be very merit-based. Now, this is going to push teachers to get into different training programs, because they know that's going to be linked to their their promotion and also to their salary. So I think that's something really nice. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, also connected to the teacher, was the parity in service. According to me, this is one of the most beautiful things that have come up. I remember it's always been, I think in almost all the schools, मुझे PGT बनना है. क्यों? salary बहुत अच्छी है, respect बहुत ज़्यादा है. And I think that's such a sad affair. It's the foundational age teacher who's probably working just as hard or even harder because of the little ones. So when you give parity in service conditions in all stages, you're not really wanting to jump from one stage to the other because you feel it's only then that you're going to get respect or you're going to get your salary. So I think this parity in service condition is an extremely nice part. And the moment all these things are done and the teacher gets respect, there are more and more children who are going to, after class 12, want to come into the teaching profession. So I think on the whole, the policy has been very, very I think it's been a great document in terms of getting the best into the profession. And I hope that it's implemented well and that carries on. The other aspect that I wanted to speak about after speaking about the teacher was the student. Quite a few things have been spoken about the students, but I'm just going to mention a few. One is going to be on the curriculum, the other, the curriculum and the pedagogy, and also on the assessment part. So on the curriculum front, a lot has been spoken about the foundational years. I think that this 5+3+3+4 has been a great addition because finally the foundational stage children and teachers both have got their recognition. And when we talk about the recognition, it also means that the teacher training, I hope, is going to be very specialized, play-based, it's going to be activity-based. The complete training for this set of teachers is going to be, should be very different from what is there in all the others, because it's the age where a child's brain is developing and in the formative years, the skills are to be built for life. So I think it's the recognition to the foundational stage is also going to give a lot of push to good curriculum development and teacher training in the way she transacts the teaching learning process in the classroom. So I think that's something that I've really, really appreciated. The other thing that I appreciated in the document was that the content is going to be reduced and it's going to be brought down to the core essentials. All these years, we've just been adding, and we've not really rationalized our syllabus. I'm glad we are talking about that because once we rationalize the syllabus, I think there's going to be time for a teacher to do what the policy again speaks about, and we've all been speaking about, experiential learning. To do experiential good learning, there has to be time on the hand of the teacher. So to really be able to transact again the teaching learning process well, I need time. And for that, the content reduction, I think, is a great, great move. Subject choices have already been spoken about by Punam ji, so I don't want to go ahead with that. But I think, again, it's a great move. And all the new subjects that they've spoken about, which already actually has been introduced. AI has already come in class 8 for the past 2 years, and it's 8, 9, and 10. So I think, design thinking, AI, they've been great choices for the secondary years. And she also mentioned about certain subjects like coding, mathematical thinking, which is going to be very good to bring in a scientific temper. So I don't want to repeat the same. I do want to mention though, vocational training for 1 year at least. And I would say in progressive schools like ours, we would like to take it up maybe for 3 years, 6, 7, and 8. Give them choices. Let them know what are the different vocations. Because once you know what are the different vocations, you have two advantages. I think one very big advantage is that you get dignity for labor. When you do all kind of work, you really get empathetic to people in society working on at all levels, number one. Number two, once I am exposed at the right time to vocational training, I also have a choice. Once I step out of school, I have loved what I did in 6, 7, and 8, and now I want to take that up as a vocation. And vocational education in the higher education has been given a lot of emphasis. So I think this little blend that they've done between school education and higher education at many levels is something that is to be appreciated in the document. Another thing that I loved was, along with maths, which came up this time as basic and standard, there are all subjects that are going to come up at 2 levels. So that way, I'm good at maths or I'm not good at maths, but I just want to do it because I want to get the scientific temper. I think then I try and take up my, the basic level of a science or a maths, because I think I just need to take it as a skill rather than the fact that it's important for me when I go in for my higher education. And now that higher education is going to allow no silos and all kind of liberal arts and streams, though CBSE had always allowed us to take different subjects, it's now going to be so much more easier for us as educators to convince children to take, because we used to offer them, they wouldn't take, because if they took, they never got admission without a maths and BCom in Delhi University. So tomorrow, if that is allowed, well, children are going to be taking all kind of subjects in school. So I think these choices given in the document is a beautiful thing. Assessments, some things have already been spoken about, but what I really liked is that in the assessment part, board examinations are going to become easier. A big ill of the coaching centers are hopefully with a semester system with easier board examination are going to go. And I think it's going to be one of the biggest gifts to schools, because children didn't want to come to schools. They just wanted to go to coaching centers. And I think they missed out on 2 very beautiful years of 11 and 12 education, because they never thought that coming to school was important or regularity was important. So I think that's another very important part of the assessment. 3, 5, and 8, I have my own reservations also. Yes, they say it's going to be learning outcome based, but they talk about, there is going to be a public disclosure of the results. So if there is a public disclosure, I'm just hoping it's not going to become again the race which we already have after the board examinations of 10 and 12. Now we start pressurizing our children of 3, 5, and 8. I'm just fearful of that. I hope they handle it very, very well. So that's another issue. Mother tongue, already spoken about, but yes, very passionate about it. I think very close to my heart, because there are times when people just struggle, kids struggle, because they just kind of, grapple with language rather than the core concepts. So I think a lot of very, very valuable time is lost in this struggle. So it's a great idea, with all the other pitfalls, of course, already mentioned, about bringing in the mother tongue, about going bilingual. But I think one beautiful part of this is going to be, if we go mother tongue, which I'm sure we will, many schools are already doing it, already mentioned about Sardar Patel Vidyalaya in Delhi. It's a beautiful experiment that is. Parents get involved, because a parent can understand, especially when you're a first generation learner. A parent sits with the child and gets involved in the teaching learning process. So I think mother tongue till class 5. And in fact, they even say, if you can take it up right up to class 8 and go bilingual, I think it's a great move. 2, 3 more things. The twinning between the public and the private schools. I think that's a great, great move, because we as private institutions have to play our role in sharing our best practices, hand-holding the government schools. Now, I have great hope in the fact that once we have a government school, and I think all the good schools are working with quite a few of them, when you go to these government schools and actually observe, there's a lot that you also learn. When my children go to the government schools, they come back far more empathetic. So I think it's going to be a great learning for both the private sector and for the government schools. And again, a reduction in the weight of the school bag, and 10 days no bag, school bag is again, I think, a brilliant move. So I think there are some great moves. The last thing I want to mention is the inclusivity that it talks about, the SEDGs, the special education zones that they are wanting to make. The fact that so many people are going to be almost pushed into the education system to study. The children with special needs, the gifted children, they have had a 360-degree view of just about everyone. So according to me, though education is in the concurrent list, if the center and the state has great relations, if they really manage to push this document well, I think it's going to be a great document. And again, I want to mention the 6%, of our GDP, if it's spent, I think it's going to be great. So on the whole, I'm very hopeful, very optimistic. Good document. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable inputs, towards the national education policy. And of course, focus on the core concept rather than the language only, focus on the experiential learning, reduction in the content, learning comes before earning. That's somehow, we can look at. And there are a lot of takeaways, of course, from this, talk. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we have questions and the questions are coming from, similarly Facebook Live as well. So we have a question from Vijita Sivanand from Muscat. So we request you to please unmute and ask your question. You have been given permission, so I request you to please unmute and please ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. My question is to Anil, sir. We have been told that the ministry is seeking. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are
Yes.
audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah. The ministry is seeking suggestions from teachers around the world, Indian teachers around the world, for NAP implementation. So my query is, will all our inputs be, taken, or is it just, is it just a formality, or will all the inputs be taken? So I want your comment on that.
The government appears to be very serious about these comments. Even when the draft education policy was circulated, I know for sure that every suggestion was gone into. But if you mean that every suggestion will be accepted, perhaps not. It may not be accepted, but I can assure you that the commitment that the government has shown, they will certainly go through your suggestion. And if found appropriate, they'll incorporate it. And it is evidenced by the fact that the original draft that was submitted by Dr. Kasturi Rangan committee underwent quite a lot of changes. A lot of additions came through because of the suggestions, people like you. So pick up your pen or pick up your laptop and send in your suggestions. I'm sure they're going to look at it.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we have another question from Mr. Nasir Qayyum from Kashmir. Mr. Qayyum, please unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, sir. My question is to Sir Anil, sir. Sir, as from past many years, we are focusing only on the teacher-centric learning. So my question is that, will government really implement this policy to be a student learning, as every student has its own some innate qualities? So we should not focus on, for example, we should not implement on a child to do this or that. So if we are really focusing on the child-centric learning, every child is bestowed with some innate qualities. So what is the procedure for the government? Is government really implementing such kind of a factor?
See, your question was not clear. If I understood you correctly, you're asking whether the government is serious in terms of implementing what they've said. I can tell you very sure. Yesterday, we had a long 3-hour-long discussion with the representatives of the government that included Secretary School Education, and they displayed real commitment to implement this policy. In fact, I was really impressed with the roadmap that was laid down. The commitment is certainly there to implement the policy. You should have absolutely no doubt about it. Everyone in the central government, and there were, mind you, 4 state government secretaries also in that workshop, and all of them have actually drawn out their roadmaps. So they are at it. Of course, in doing it's a humongous task. It's not easy. They will take time, but I think the commitment is there. You have to have no doubt about it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for this. Now, another question is coming from Mr. Anand Agrawal from Agra. Mr. Agrawal, please unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Yes. Sir, my 2 questions are there, one from Anil, sir, and one from Punam. From Anil, sir, my question is that does this NEP include anything with respect to the private teachers' pay scale? Because you know the conditions, you must be aware about it. And will this also fix the fee regulations for the parents? does this NEP will fix any pay scale or like fee scale for the parents? And from Punam ma'am, I want to ask, ma'am, don't you think that if we will allow the students to study multiple subjects after even 12th, then they will always remain diverted. They will never be focused for their future. Thank you.
Okay, for school regulation, there is a provision in the policy. But since you come from UP and I also come from UP, and during my time as school education secretary, state government had come out with a legislation. It is a remarkable legislation in terms of fee regulation. And I don't know whether you're aware, this legislation or the draft thereof was prepared by FICCI, not by the government itself. And it has been accepted, it has been implemented. In fact, my attempt has been to roadshow this legislation to other states. It's been totally messed up in Gujarat. UP, there's still some problems, but at least the broad framework is there. And the policy also commits itself to bringing about this balance between one extreme or the other. Obviously, you can't blame only private schools. There has to be a rational. I can go on and on and explain to you what could possibly be the way forward, which is already there in the legislation. But I think the policy is also committed to it. My only problem there is, which I didn't discuss then, was that the policy talks in terms of splitting the role of the Department of School Education, bringing in separate set of regulators and management of government schools by two different agencies. My only apprehension is, as I have seen in the past, it should not run into another Inspector Raj. There can be a way out also in that, but I hope it happens that way. So you don't have to bother in UP. They have already done it.
Hello, should I answer the other question?
Please, ma'am.
Yeah. See, there's a wonderful move that from grade 6 onwards, a child will take up a particular skill, so that the reason is that he creates an identity for himself that gives him the necessary confidence as well. And, it's like what we've done in our schools also, that a child comes out of the school, he can say, I am the badminton player of the school, or I'm a theater person, or I'm the singer or the dancer, or whatever. I mean, whatever the child wishes to do. So the question of getting diverted doesn't arise, because even a skilled person who builds a dam, he needs to understand the other aspects as well, the environment issues. What is it that is really required? So for a better global understanding, everyone needs to have a passion, apart from a skill that he is trying to, achieve his end all and be all in. You see, for example, if I've done literature, I've also done Indian classical music, which has given me so much of peace. So it is not deviating from anything. It's an add-on. It helps to boost your own morale and gives the right identity and the confidence that a child requires. Have I answered your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, sir. And thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, another question is coming from Dr. Neha Gupta. Dr. Neha Gupta, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Good
Good
sir,
evening.
it's Dr. Neha Singh. I don't know how Gupta is here.
Okay, Dr. Neha.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, sir. I'm really happy to talk to you. Sir, ma'am, sir, I have a few questions. My first question is, ma'am, regarding subject choice. Obviously, a child needs to learn some skill after grade 6 and everything happens. But ma'am, in schools, we don't have that resources. We can see in COVID only, we are not getting salaries just because the resources are not there. So how come we'll be able to assess all those resources? Because there are multi-skills. We will require more resources. My second question is, ma'am, regarding that education is in concurrent list. So we have different syllabus in every state. So if a migratory child comes to my school, I'm from North India, from Alwar, Rajasthan. So what happens is a South Indian child has a way add-on knowledge in comparison to Northern child in some spheres, and vice versa. Northern child leads in some spheres. So can't we have one nation, one education, something like that, so that a child in whole India, a child if in grade 1 and he gets admitted to any school, he can have that same level. we are sure about KV, that KV has the same syllabus, so everything goes on fine. But this is the problem as a teacher I face when I teach students from different areas. And my third question is related to internet services. Since I am from Alwar, so what happens in rural areas, internet services are not proper. So if we are trying to use digital resources in new education policy, will we be able to provide all these education policies to the child, all the resources? Because child is in school for 5 to 6 hours. Rest of the time he is in his home. So how come we are going to, get into a comprehensive kind of scene like that? And thank you so much.
Okay, let me try and answer the last two questions. First, I don't remember. I'm growing old, so I forget. Now, as far as the single curriculum is concerned, India is a diverse country. You can't push down a curriculum to everyone. Of course, NCERT is working on a national curriculum framework, which was last developed in 2005. They're developing a fresh framework. Within that broad framework, the states will and should have the flexibility to bring in the local content. It is certainly required. So I am not personally in favor of pushing down everything in everybody's throat. That leads to many problems in a diverse country like ours. In fact, we should celebrate that diversity and allowing the schools and states to have their own curriculum within that large framework. So that is one. As far as the internet connectivity is concerned, madam, recall what was the situation 10 years ago. You didn't even have this. And it's improving by the day. I can assure you, one of the best fallout of COVID, the positive fallout, has been the focus on use of technology. And I can assure you, in next 5 years, we won't even talking about this. The government is already working at taking this internet connectivity to every panchayat. And it's not that difficult a task as it was thought earlier. I don't know whether you're aware, government has recently laid cable from Chennai to Port Blair. The sea cable has been laid. So in next 2-3 years, I think the connectivity will improve dramatically. And I don't think you have to bother about it. But beware, don't replace the teacher by technology. That would be disastrous.
Yes, don't do that.
Thank you, sir.
Very well said, Mr. Swarup.
Sorry.
I request Dr.
Yes.
Neha Singh to please repeat your first question.
I'll just answer. I noted out her first question, and I just
please,
wanted to
ma'am,
add to even what Dr. Swarup said. I completely agree with him. I think that's a very optimistic approach. And again, I want to just mention that I remember that when the draft policy came out, obviously the COVID wasn't there at that time. And when the policy has come out, there is a complete chapter or a section on online education and use of technology, and it mentions the pandemic. What I'm trying to say is that as things are moving and as times are changing, the government is being quite proactive in trying to bring in changes. And I'm very hopeful we will be getting not only cheap internet widespread all over the country, we are also going to start looking into devices in some form for children who have not got devices today and are suffering from this digital divide. So I'm quite hopeful about that. So I completely agree with Mr. Swarup. The other thing is when children do move in our schools from one state to the other, besides what he said, I think usually they pick up a CBSE school or curriculum where there aren't too many changes. Obviously, there aren't changes at all, except for the language, of course, which is local. So it's a good idea to just pick up a CBSE school. When it comes to the subject choice that you mentioned, that resources are not there, so how the school's going to manage? Well, I can't really mention about resources for a particular school because it depends again on the management and how much you really chip into this issue. But giving a choice to the children, putting in resources, they also talk about complexes, okay? So I gather, if I have understood it well, Anilji will be able to, I think, throw more light on this. This complexes is a very government school concept, but we have already got hubs of learning in a CBSE concept. Well, you've got schools. If you really want to pick up teachers from one school to the other and share your resources, I think that's a very good indication that you can share resources. So why can't we go into that rather than always spending a lot of money to get resources to children? There is a way to build it into your timetable. I think that's possible. So that's what
I think very well put, Mrs. Burman. I'll just supplement what you said. These complexes that they're being talked about may appear to be new to you. But if you look at Rajasthan, the way they have transformed school education,
Yes.
It is through these complexes. In fact, they have done away with redundant primary schools where you had 4 to 5 children and 2 teachers sitting there, which was done on the basis of RT, Right to Education Act. I have written it did more disservice to education than service. So you had these schools coming up because a certain criteria was determined in Delhi or in Jaipur about how far the school should be. And now they've become redundant. Now they're creating these complexes and enabling children to provision of some transfer allowance to them or for transportation allowance to them so that they can come to the school. So this is a very good concept. You know, as I said in the beginning, phenomenal concepts in them, and we should be optimistic about it.
Absolutely.
Provided, I mean, my optimism is totally based on getting some money out of it. I hope this pushes government to push in some money here.
Well, thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Now, parallelly, we are also getting a lot of questions in the Facebook. So I'm going to read one of the questions on behalf of the participant. This question is for Ms. Amrita Burman. Ma'am, the person is Mr. Tanveer. He's from Dunes International School, Saudi Arabia, and he's asking, how are we going to blend this national education policy in overseas? Will the policy be same or little different, as there are several restrictions in these countries?
So actually, I'm not the right person, because I think again it's a policy decision. And in fact, I think Punam ji would love to throw light on this after I say what I want to, because she's been in these things. But on the whole, what I understand in so many years of dealing with CBSE and being in a CBSE school, that whenever they make a policy, they always keep their overseas schools in mind. And they always give this freedom that once you are there in another country, you have to follow, I'm sure, certain local policies. You can't not do it. So Tanveer ji, I think there is no reason to fear, because for years India, the CBSE schools have been there overseas, and I don't think they've ever had any major problem, because I met a lot of principals from all over the place and they've never really complained. In fact, they've always spoken about the CBSE being very supportive to the way they transact their their academics, so, and other things also. So I don't think it's a reason to fear. Over to you, Punam ji. You'll be able to add light on this.
Yeah. Well, I've been in Kuwait for 16 years as a principal, and they were very, Kuwait government was very supportive, and I was able to take my school to the world debating level. And I've been to Saudi Arabia also. They are all very supportive, and a few little things which I know what you're talking about, you know, those can be overlooked because you'll have to deal with the culture there. Saudi Arabia is a little more strict, but the rest of the Gulf and UAE and the other places, no problems, because I've just launched a school in Kuwait of the Delhi World Foundation, and they've already, you know, started off with everything, and they're doing a wonderful job. They've started with new ideas, which even we are learning from them. So I don't think you need to worry at all, as very rightly said by Amrita also. You don't have to worry.
Thank you so much to both of you. And now we have another question from Ms. Avneet Kaur. I request you to please unmute and please ask your question. Ms. Avneet Kaur. Okay, there must be some network. All right. So we are moving to the next person, Mr. Yusuf Ali Muhammad Rasool. Mr. Yusuf Ali, please unmute and ask your question. I request you to please unmute, sir.
Good evening, the panelists. I was so happy and inquisitive to take the information, very valuable. My question is, how this NEP policy will touch this rural India? Because there's a lot of concern. It has to be digitalized. That's number one. The government is working hard. How this policy is going to implement so that these deprived students from rural India to be blessed, because the major chunk of the population comes from rural India, and these are the, you know, particularly I'm emphasizing on foundation level. My second question is to the speakers of the day, is that inquiry-based learning is a prime aspect of NEP policy, where learning should be based around the student's question, where pedagogy requires students to work together to solve problems rather than receiving direct instructions from the teacher. And my third question is about the assessment. How well the students are assessed, it is based upon how far they have developed the analytical skills, okay, experimental and analytical skills, rather than how much knowledge they have possessed during the learning period of their schooling, etc., etc. And my last question is, we've been generating HR all these years. What I have seen is a quite what I can say, so sorry to say about it, because we being lacking the skills. I hope the NEP policy have emphasized more on skill-based learning tools, okay? Where, youth, of course, at the end of the day, what counts is the skills, right? As if like I have just contradicted that policy in my question chat. Has it like a pizza base without topping, So the topping is must. So I hope I am very clear with my questions. I'm very pleasant to hear from the speakers. Please.
Mr. Rasool, my suggestion to you would be, take a close look at the policy itself. All the answers are there. Each one of the questions that you've raised is answered there. Just to give you an example, the focus on skilling. The policy spent so much time on it. In fact, it is for the first time, as if you heard me appropriately, it was for the first time that skilling and vocational training has been put on the same pedestal as science side. And the child has the flexibility to switch from one to the other. And skilling starts from class 6. It has never happened before in the country, ever. So I just give you one example. When you talk in terms of use of technology, the policy does not say that you start using technology from tomorrow. In fact, it lays emphasis on technology. It says that we should switch over to that side. And it is eminently doable. Let me give you an example. I had the occasion to visit a government primary school in Maharashtra, in a place called Pastepada, which get outlined in my book, where this school, which did not have electricity, every child had a tablet and they had a solar panel, which they were charging these tablets. That experiment in Pastepada has been replicated in 50,000 schools of Maharashtra even before this policy. What I'm trying to say here is there is enormous potential of what can happen. In fact, it was so heartening to hear Dr. Kashyap, because if at her age, I mean, she wouldn't be much elder to me, but at her age,
no, I am.
if she could be so positive and full of energy, I think we, maybe not of that age, we should have at least twice the energy, if not more. So I get energized by her optimism. I have no reason to believe that this will not happen. I may have reservations on certain issues. That is a part of democratic existence. There could be a difference of opinion against a part of democratic existence. But I would suggest to you, please read the policy, because every point that you've raised has actually been answered, at least at a conceptual level in the policy.
Sure, sure.
Absolutely agreed with you, sir. Very well said.
Yes, very well said, Mr. Swarup.
Very well.
He's really
important to be
done a
optimistic.
beautiful job of it. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
And
Now,
the topping is there, by the way. The topping is nice and large.
Probably the
You've got
first
the
time
icing on the
pizza.
cake as well.
Yes.
The icing on the cake, you can't see it. Just try to see it. You know, we look at things, but we don't see them properly. That's how it is.
Probably
So
the first time the topping is there.
And you see, let us all understand, as human beings, we are all very critical and we love to criticize, and that comes very easily to us. But to conform to something and then to adapt to it, to try and work towards it, to actually show your passion and do something, you know, you'll find a solution to every problem. And there are students who are willing to go out to the villages to teach. You know, there are various ways of doing it, giving, you know, incentivize the students, incentivize the teachers, and then the sky is the limit. So I don't think there are too many problems on this issue. And of course, let me tell you, challenges are part of life. If there are no challenges, what is life? So let's take it in a very, very positive manner.
We are very highly optimistic about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. In fact, it's such a lovely answer that both of you all have given. I think for the first time, probably, and I think Anilji again would say much more than I would, because he would have done, number of documents. This document speaks so much about the mistakes we've made in the past.
Absolutely.
Quite a few times they keep saying, this was wrong, we want to correct it. So when you start from the point of saying that we've made mistakes and we want to correct it, I think optimism should be absolutely very high on the success of the document. And it is people like us, Yusufji, you, me, all of us sitting here. I think it is our responsibility and duty as educators to see to it that this document is implemented well, rather than just blaming the government that they've not done. If they've not done certain things, we've also failed. So let's get up and, handhold with the government, and let's do it together for the sake of the future of the country.
Yes, 3 cheers to that. And the minute teachers are equated with lawyers, with doctors, with professionals, with research scholars, I'm telling you, our entire problem will be taken care of. If a teacher is taken at par as a doctor or a lawyer or a scientist or anything, just tell me, people would love to get into the profession. There would be no teachers there by chance. It'll all be choice, and they'll all be passionate like us, and we will not have any problem. I can tell you that. So most importantly, give that respect to that teacher. You see, teachers should not just be a masterani, who's never had that kind of a rapport with the masses, with the community, with the children, with everybody. Oh, she's just a teacher. But it is teachers who are shaping the entire world, our destiny, our tomorrow. Most importantly, I think teachers should get that respect. And I'm very happy with this 4 years. In Finland, it's a 7-year program for a teacher to even get into a class. 7 years. And it's also like an integrated course. And I've met those teachers. I've got brought them here. I've done the entire course with my teachers of all my 60 schools. And the only thing we could learn was how they would teach with love, with joy, with just playing with them, just like one of them. It was just amazing. And naturally, the children will turn out to be some exceptional human beings whom we'll be very, very proud of.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. Hats off.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you. Now we'll take a couple of questions because the time has its own constraints. So now we have Tashima Roy from Assam. I request you to please unmute and ask your question. Ms. Tashima Roy.
Very good evening to the panelists. It was wonderful hearing all of you. And I would also like to congratulate Indianika for giving us the opportunity to having an interaction with you all. Thank you so much. Okay, my question is to Amrita ma'am, Amrita Burman ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, as you mentioned, that teachers play a very important role. They are the backbone of a school, rather you can say that. So like as this new NEP is coming up, and there will be a lot of changes, and we have to upgrade them, changes to be made in the role of teachers or in the functioning or execution of teachers or their teaching work. So how do we keep them motivating all the time? Because after some point of time, they might be little, we need to make them energetic. Although I, being a principal, can understand the teachers always coming to me with a problem. So how do I motivate, keep on energetic and keeping on motivating them all the time? So how do, as a principal, what will be my role in motivating them?
Yes. You will, my dear, if I may say so, you will lead by example. You will lead by example. Now, definitely, it is the role of a transformational leader. You don't just sit in an ivory tower in your beautiful office. You see, a principal, to be a good leader, has to be among the teachers with the children all the time. And if you lead by example, there is no problem. Let me tell you, the child, whoever is not motivated, the minute sees the principal's face and that smile and that love and that attention, that's it. That's what's required.
So I just wanted to add, since you directed the question to me, Tushima, that very rightly said by Punam, and I'll take off from what she said. The document has probably again for one of the first times spoken about the CPD 50 hours even for the principal, for the leaders, not only the principal, but all leaders. And it talks about instructional leadership. So when you have an instructional leader leading the school, it percolates all the way down. So that I think is one of the most important things. Besides that, you were talking about how do you motivate your teachers. I think the respect we give to our teachers in the class and at home and in society, that's very important. Every teacher has to have a very high self-esteem. When the self-esteem is high, my motivation is very high. The other thing is, again, it's spoken about the salaries. The salaries have to be given well, because all said and done, the respect to any individual, man or woman, it's got nothing to do with the gender, is to a large extent, kind of equalized with the kind of money that you get in. So when we have good salaries, good pay packets, I think the teachers are going to be motivated. So, and the other last thing that I wanted to mention is two things actually. When institutions, and especially private schools like us, invest in their teachers, it's not only the salary. How much do you really develop them? How much are you investing in their, coming up with better methods of teaching and in their pedagogical skills, and giving them the freedom to design their own lessons and to be able to come out of a class feeling successful about what she has done and made a difference in a child's life. I think these few things, but they're very simple things, let me tell you. There's no rocket science in this. When you do these simple things, the teachers feel very motivated and they're ready to do anything. I'll tell you one thing I want to add here. There are many schools in the country today, because they're not getting fees, are not being able to pay full salaries to their teachers. Yet the teachers are doing a very good job, good job, because the managements are standing with them, probably not being able to give them salaries, but investing a lot in their other skill building. So I think at the end of the day, how much do you connect to your teachers, handhold them and invest in them and respect them? That motivates the teacher.
Absolutely. Well said.
Correct. Absolutely. Thank you so much to both of you. Now we're going to have two more questions. One is from Miss Pushpa Manjari Sahu. Ms. Pushpa Manjari Sahu, I request you to please unmute and ask your question.
Good afternoon to all of you, all panel members. Am I audible, madam?
Yes.
Sir?
Please go ahead.
So my question is, in fact, are we promoting through this new policy, educational policy, are we trying to promote only one specific branch of education? Like if a child is in science and maths, why the child after class 8, I mean to say, why the child has to do all the subjects together, taking as a burden if the child is not showing very good performance and we think will be very good in science only. So do we have we thrown any light upon this, just like foreign countries it is happening?
Punamji, did you understand the question?
No, not really.
I don't think that there is anything like that in the policy at all.
No, there isn't. No.
There doesn't seem to be.
In fact, there is so much of relaxation now.
Yes.
And children can opt for what they want. I mean, earlier, a child who couldn't do maths can just do without mathematics now.
Yes.
So I don't see her point at all. Sorry.
In fact, there are more choices. Even at the most,
far more choices.
You have two levels for every subject. So I think there's so much more accommodating in the NEP.
No, but the child has to do all the subjects, ma'am.
No, it's not that. The child is going to do the same number of subjects that they're doing today, except that the choices are going to increase. It's not that you now start doing 10 subjects. No, it's not like that.
Okay. So only 11th and 12th they will have for their own subject.
They'll have, even now they have a choice of subjects, except that it used to be only humanities,
only commerce.
That too, frankly, it was never there in CBSE. With a chemistry, you could take an economics, even in CBSE. But higher
Yeah,
education
some
was
subjects you
important.
could. Yes, yes,
But
yes.
now they're more in tandem, I hope. So it's going to be.
Yes.
No, madam, pardon, madam. My question was eight upwards. Is there any chance like that?
No, except for a vocational, which they've added, which is going to be, which can be done like a club also, except that it's going to be compulsory for students. We all have clubs in our schools, for example. You're already doing quite a few other things, but here vocational is going to become, at least for 1 year, over 6, 7, and 8, it's compulsory. So what I
Yes.
can really see something.
And that will help the children.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't
that
see
will
any
help.
other mission at all. No.
Thank you very much, madam.
Okay, so now the last question from Dr. G. Vinod Kumar. Dr. G. Vinod Kumar, please unmute and ask your question.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Good evening, all the panelists and Indianaka, the members. I'm from VS Vidyalaya, HL Township, Sunabada, Odisha. I have posted 2 questions. One for Amrita ma'am as well as Punam ma'am also. But being time constrained, I just wanted to club both the questions here. I'm basically a biology teacher. Still now, whatever the practical skills are going on, just for the sake of examination, we are allowing them to do some sort of practical activities. But I'm sure, being a teacher and handling the students, I can directly tell that in their realistic life, there won't be any use of these experiences. But the new education policy has introduced these vocational courses from class 6th. So, and even the Honourable Prime Minister also looking forward for this Skill India to achieve the Make in India concept. But how far we can reach these particular targets by introducing these vocational courses at the class 6th level, because we have been seeing the practical scenario, whatever is going on with class 11th and 12th, and on ground we know what extent they are useful in their daily routine, but in which way these vocational courses can be implemented, and what would be the role of government to give such type of infrastructure to the rural government schools, and what would be the role of the managements of different private schools to inculcate these practical skills among the children, and at the same time what must be the role of the dedicated teacher. Those skills, that was one of my questions to ma'am, Amrita ma'am, and I have posted one more question to even Punam ma'am. I'm just like a transitional man. I mean to say, my teaching is now with this new generation, but I was the student of the previous generation. My teachers were just like you people, ma'am. So I have learned many things, the basic values, the classroom environment, the conditions, the respect towards the teacher, and the student-teacher relation was different. But now it is something missing. In this situation, how far a teacher should be to maintain such type of values in the classroom, and how to attract the students to the young mass who are attending this webinar. Please address them, ma'am, please.
I didn't really get your last question on the values. I'll probably ask you to repeat it later, but let me first address your question of the vocational, what I understood, that how practical it is and of what use is it, if I could just paraphrase what you said. So yes. I think it's one of the most important and powerful, one of the most powerful things of the NEP. Reason is that I think in a country like India, where there are a lot of children who probably drop out right after school. I mean, they pass out of school and probably want to choose a vocation because they can't afford higher education. I think for them, it's a very, very good experiment, a lab in classes 6, 7, and 8 to take up a vocation so that they can choose that as a vocation, get trained probably in a certificate course because that is what is being allowed in the higher education, and take it up as a profession. So I think that's something that is really needed by the country, and it's going to give employability to the children. The other thing in schools like ours, there are private and probably a little bit more, there are children from different kind of families who come in. For them also taking up vocation is important because it gives them dignity of labor, which I mentioned earlier. a choice. And the fact remains that when we talk of vocational training, it is not only necessarily carpentry or those kind of vocations. Vocational learning subjects can also be the kind of subjects that children from different backgrounds would like to do. For example, you can take up something in terms of computer. You can be a desktop operator, or you can do a lot of things in the computer field. So there are thousands of vocational courses that schools can choose from. I'm sure the list will be out finally by the board when they implement it. So on the whole, I think to make a life, to get a choice in life, and for dignity of labor, both empathy towards that, I think it's a very, very good move and should be encouraged. And I'm sure schools like us would love to invest in vocational, and the government is going to invest in the government schools also, because I think that's going to be the way forward to give employability.
Yes. All agencies will get together, and that's how the GDP will increase. And that's how the finance will come. And that should not be a worry, because the government is already worrying about it. So we need to worry about the actual implementation, I think. And yes, sorry, your question about how can I motivate the students? Now, this is such a broad-based thing. It cannot be done in a minute, but you have to connect with every child. You have to understand, is your subject is so interesting in any case. But if a child is not interested in biology and is interested in something else, then you'll have to mentor. You'll have to counsel the child to take the subject that he wants. Because if anybody loves a subject, he will love the teacher and he'll do very well. Simple. That's how it is, isn't it?
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank
Now,
you.
as per the request, we are coming constant request from a person through Facebook. Her name is Vandana, and she wants to ask a question to Sir. Sir, the question is related to the opinions about teachers. So what she writes is, what if the opinion of various teachers contradicts? Then which one will be taken, on a priority basis? So this is her question, and she's constantly writing, us. And she wants you to please answer this.
I'm assuming that she's also a teacher. And as a teacher, she would appreciate that it is only through differences of opinion that we grow. If everyone agrees to everything I do, the growth will stop.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of democracy. We should encourage difference of opinion. We should not pull them down. It is through conversation. If you look at the Indian civilization as we grew through tark, to argument, to discuss in a congenial environment, in a good environment, with good intentions, but difference of opinion have to exist, will exist, always will exist. So I don't think we have still found the ultimate truth or the ultimate right. It is through discussions that we evolve. I mean, policy is absolutely fabulous, but as we go along, there would be difference of opinion. There should be difference of opinion in terms of implementing this policy. What I normally suggest to everyone is, you may disagree with certain aspects of the policy. Let it put it on the back burner, because that has now come. There's no point in further discussing it.
Yes.
Let us see those aspects of the policies which are doable, and there are quite a few of them which are doable. Let's get down to business. I'll tell you why. If you start doing what is doable, you will grow in confidence to touch those areas which appear to be non-doable at this point in time. But if you still keep debating what is not doable, you will never start what is doable. So don't worry about difference of opinion. Teachers obviously have to have difference of opinion. It is not 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, in any conversation which is purely not mathematical, there are bound to be difference of approaches. That's how we learn. So don't worry about difference of opinion. And if two teachers are fighting together, get them over to Dr. Kashyap, and I think she'll sort it out.
Thank you. We have to agree to disagree.
All right. Now, since we have a lot of questions, but yes, time, is over. And now I request Mr. Sumit Gupta to please join us again. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Swarup. Well, this is a wonderful session, very powerful one. Picked up a lot of new learning and a lot of nuggets. I would want to thank all the panelists, our chief guest, Shri Anil sir. Anil sir, it is always a treat to listen to you. Always I pick up those nuggets of wisdom and your optimism, despite working in the government sector for so long, where things are not that positive, very difficult as the perception goes. And keeping that optimism high really gives us a lot of energy, a lot of inspiration. I always learn that, and it's always great. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing that. And when everyone looks at the negative sides, as you said, pick up whatever we can do. So it's like what was going on in my mind was, it was like all the lights can't be green. You have to start the journey and take it up. And so I would also like to mention about the Nexus of Good. That's basically when everybody is looking at negative things and what cannot be done or what can go wrong. You're looking at what are the good things and how can they be spread. So that Nexus of Good initiative is really a wonderful one. Thank you, sir, for taking out time and be with us and share your such learning and experience with us. Thank you, Kashyap ma'am, Dr. Kashyap, to you for taking out time. And I really picked up and love that joy thing. If learning becomes joy for the student or the child, or even for anyone, we truly believe in experiential learning. Even in fact, when I was talking about our mission, that was also set up with an objective in mind, that this is basically how do we learn, whether child or adults, we learn through experiences. So we can enrich that experience or enhance that experience, then learning will be fun. So ma'am, that was great, that joy, and life will always be full of challenges. So how do we give that child a comfort that, yes, this is challenging, but how it can be made joyful. Thank you, ma'am, so much for sharing those wonderful words. And Mrs. Burman, thank you to you so much for coming us and learning more about that yes, the mistakes would be there always. And if we don't learn from those mistakes, it's a mistake wasted. So this NEP, as all the each one of you mentioned, is full of so many things that what were the mistakes done in the past? So let's not repeat them. How can we correct them, or what could be done? Maybe there will be a lot will remain desirable, but I think that's a great step. This national policy is a step, is a beginning, and I'm sure it will help us making learning fun, making the child much more 360-degree or all-round skilling of the child. So that's great, and thank you so much for your time. Thank you to all the participants. Over to you, Swarup.
Thank you so much, sir. And I express my sincerest gratitude to both of our panelists, respected panelists, and Anil sir as well. Thank you so much for your wonderful advices on this particular topic. And also, I'm thankful to all the participants for being here today. We really appreciate that you took the time to be here today to attend this panel discussion. I just request all of you, once you leave this, there is a feedback form link. It will take you directly there. I request you to please spend a minute there to fill the feedback form. It is very important for us. Well, it was indeed a pleasure for us hosting you today. Stay connected, stay tuned with Indianica Learning for such more engagements. I, Swarup Beniwal, signing out for the day. You all have a great evening ahead. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you, Swarup.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.